Good evening, everybody. Depending on where you're at, you're a little bit further ahead in time than we are, but Happy New Year to everybody. And today we're going to be reviewing some of the best performing mods of 2022 and some recommendations that we have in here as well. Some notable mentions we'll get to towards the end, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. But just so that we can get started here, pretty much everything that we have here is going to be something that we put on the car in 2022, or we were able to put it on late 2021 and we're able to fully review it and give our thoughts on it in 2023 now. So the first thing that we have up here is going to be the KW DDC kit. This one, actually, financially wise, it pains me to say it just a little bit because I probably should have done this first. Out of all of the modifications that I did suspension wise, I don't know why, but I ended up on the coilovers towards the end. So I did the control arms first, and then that one was more specifically because we were trying to dial in a square setup, because we went from the stock configuration to an 18 by 8.5 with a 35 offset all the way around. And so in order to fit that, we, on the 2 Series specifically, we needed to adjust adjust the length of the arms in order to accommodate that. And we also had to dial in just a touch of camber as well. So versus going with the M3 control arms, the only issue with those is that because they're fixed length, once they're set, they're set. There's nothing that you can do about it afterwards. It's not, I would say, especially on the 2 Series, it's not the most practical thing in the world, especially if you plan to do a lot of other suspension modifications, specifically because you can't make any adjustments. And with the 2 Series, you're working with such a small working space. You really need the adjustable arms in order to make up for everything. So I would say if you need to do the control arms first, that's fine, especially if you have instability when you do the wheel test in the 3 and 9 position, as well as the 12 and 6. Go ahead and do the arms first. That's going to be the most important, especially if your stock coilovers are doing just fine. This is really talking about the upgrade pathway. The other thing that I did after that was the Turner Motorsport sway bars. And although they do make a significant improvement, I feel that their noticeable difference was diminished once I put in the coilovers. The coilovers pretty much solved most of the issues that I had, even with the body roll in the turns. Now, I will say that if we're looking at price, the thing to consider is that the coilovers are considerably cheaper. Or sorry, the sway bars are considerably cheaper. So if you allow me to, I will pull up the pricing for everything as current as we have it right now. And so the coilovers right now are $3,600. That's with the DDC kit. Of course, if you get like the V3s or the V2s, depending on what your needs are, it will be a little bit cheaper. But it's just because, you know, there's not as much tech in sway bars, that they're only about like $1,000 or so. Even with the full set and the bushings and everything. The only thing is that if you're going to have it done at a shop, it is cheaper all the way around. If you're doing it yourself, the sway bars are probably going to be cheaper. But if you're having it done at the shop, because they do have to lower the subframe a little bit, that's where you're going to have to really monitor, you know, the price of everything when you factor in labor. because the coilovers are pretty much a straightforward modification, plug and play, all that good stuff. It's the sway bars that will require a little bit more work even on the install. So whether you, especially when you do it yourself, you will understand that it is much cheaper time wise. I would say it's much cheaper to go with the coilovers first. And the reason why these ones are more expensive is because of the tech that's built in. But I think it does get knocked down quite a bit if you just go with these standard coilovers. So what we have here is see here. Oh. Sorry, I haven't quite figured out this whole new live streaming software just yet. Ice Bear, what's up? Let's see if we can pull this up here. Show secondary. Okay, yeah. I mean the coilovers, they are, you know, I won't lie. They are pretty expensive. If you don't have the EDC, or if you can live without it, I've heard somebody say that you can just simply code it out, and if you're just doing daily driven activities, then it would be best to probably just go with the V2s. And then you can just manually adjust it along the way. And then what problems do you have to change the coilovers? So with the, I would say the 3 and the 4 series, whatever you've seen on YouTube, it's going to be exactly how you see it. Just because you have that extra width in the wheel well, everything is going to operate perfectly fine. It's the 2 series that you have to break apart the lower portion of the coilover from the knuckle. You have to break it apart inside the wheel well. You can't tilt it out and then have that extra leverage to pull back. So just know that if you do have a 2 series, the coilover installation is a bit more involved. And whatever anybody says, you don't need to disassemble the entire knuckle assembly. I've seen even some pretty reputable shops do that and post their recordings on it. You don't need to do that. Just get some liquid wrench in there and then break it apart. That's honestly the best way to go. You're just going to be wasting your time. And then, especially if you don't have adjustable arms, when you loosen up the rubber bushing on the control arms, you're going to have to bring everything to ride height before you tighten it all down. The good thing with adjustable arms is because they're meant to freely rotate, you don't need to tighten them down at ride height. You can just tighten them wherever and they'll move freely and they won't cause that extra torsion in the bushing. So you'll be good to go. Let's see here. And then other people who are saying changing springs first. A lot of people do go with like the H&R kits, the KW kits. They are adjustable. I would also encourage you guys to take a look at MSS, I believe. They're actually designed, their spring rates are designed to work with the OEM struts. And so as far as compatibility wise, longevity wise, MSS seems like a better way to go, at least from their advertising perspectives. I haven't really read up on anything as far as like a longer term review on how it goes, but generally speaking, if you put lowering springs on your stock struts, it will reduce the longevity of the OEM struts just because they're not designed to handle that spring rate. But MSS is saying that they are designed to work with the compression rate of the strut, and so it should give you the best of both worlds. I think there is going to be a bit of compromise as far as how low you can go and how aggressive it feels, and then that's what you're getting in the trade-off is you're getting the longevity, but you're not getting the lowest thing in the world, and you're not getting the stiffest handling. So just weigh out what you want. If you just kind of want to get it as low as you can, as aggressive as you can, and perform as well as it can until it's all gone and you're just using it as a stopgap until you can get coilovers, then I don't really see that there being that big of an issue with it. Of course, the ride quality would suffer a little bit, but if you're okay with that, then lowering springs are a perfect option. So let's see here. Show. Let me see here. I don't know why this thing isn't. Oop. So I might have let the cat out of the bag there. As far as what our second one is. Yeah, so if anybody actually does do the MSS kit, please let me know. H&R is a good company. KW has a kit of their own. They're another good company. But I think if you're going to do lowering springs, stick with one of those three companies. And then another thing to note with the coilovers is that a lot of people have recommended that you do the Swift spring upgrade. So KWs come with unless you're talking about the club sports, they come with a progressive spring rate. And so especially if you're tracking the car, it can make it a little bit less predictable, especially when you're at the point in which the spring rate changes. But at least with the linear spring, everything's going to be consistent, very easy to predict. The only trade-off on a daily driven car is that the ride will be a little bit rougher. And from what KW is saying, the progressive spring is perfect for a daily driver, and that unless you're tracking the car, you won't really notice that big of a difference. It's much softer in the beginning to take like normal bumps and potholes and things like that in the roadway, and then it stiffens up a little bit more. But if anybody else can speak to that, please share. And let's see what other questions we have while we're on this topic. Okay, so the adjustable end links, this is another good point that someone's bringing up right now, is the adjustable end links that were designed for the 3, 4, and 2 series. Those adjustable end links will not work with this kit if you do camber plates and an aftermarket sway bar. And the reason why is because this mounting point up here for the coilovers, this mounting point is just a generic location. From my understanding is this strut body is of a generic design. I'm not sure which chassis they actually pulled it off of. And so this whole thing is a generic design. The thread pitch changes, and this collar sleeve, this gold collar sleeve at the bottom is what changes, but everything else is more or less the same. And it just keeps costs low for KW, and then it also reduces the space in which that they have for their manufacturing. So rather than having an assembly line for each different chassis, pretty much every chassis is on the same assembly line, and then the only thing that changes is the assembly of the components. And so probably like the length of the spring changes, the collar for the spring to sit on will change. And so what you're going to have to do is call up SPL Parts and ask them for the adjustable end links that Fritz has on the M235i. That should set everything right. So I did talk to SPL Parts, and it's not even like a real part number. They just had to cobble a few things together. Maybe by now, if a lot of people have inquired about it, they have an official part number. But to my knowledge as of right now, you're just going to have to call them and say, hey, could I get the end links that Fritz put on his M235i? If you want, you guys can also reference the YouTube video, and then they should know exactly what you're talking about. If you do call SPL Parts, ask for Turner. He's the one who helped me arrange everything, and he'll know exactly what you need as far as getting the correct end links to you. If you don't, what will happen is it'll kind of sandwich and it will bend. And so you'll end up with end links that are bent out of shape, or it puts so much stress on the threads of the end links that it actually pushes out the nut and it will disconnect. It'll just push out. Not like it'll break the mounting location. It's not that strong of a force, but the nut will eventually back off, and then you'll just be running without a sway bar essentially because it's not connected to anything. So that is what I would recommend. And then if you're going to lower it, especially for a daily driven car, even with it fully lifted, you're going to encounter some problems with speed bumps. And that's exactly why one of the first things that I did, I wanted to lower the weight in the front. And that's why I went with the Souvenir GTS hood. Of course, it looks great aesthetically, but because of its all aluminum construction versus steel, it's about 20 pounds lighter depending on which chassis that you have. On the 2 Series, it is 20 pounds lighter than the stock hood. The only thing is that you'll have to paint it, and then it does come with the grill and everything. I know some people with the 3 Series have had issues with their GTS hood, but on the 2 Series, this hood fits perfectly. There is going to be a little bit of play there. There is some room for adjustability, but on the hinge, just lock in the fixed location, and then you can just slightly shift the hood in order to get in alignment. But the hood, in my case, fits perfectly fine, no issues whatsoever. The latches, the stock latches fit perfectly. They thread in, they catch, no problems whatsoever. I will say, depending on, it's hard to grade, I guess, speed bumps, but I guess the speed bumps in my area are not the steepest. And I would still scrape with the stock hood. When I put on the GTS hood, if I angled it just right, I could get away from the bumper scraping. But because the, I guess, like the mud flaps or the like the guards that hang down a little bit, I would still catch on that. It's not until I did the Wagner tuning intercooler, where we dropped about another 8 pounds right in the front, that I could clear those speed bumps. I would still have to put in some effort, but I could clear them even taking them straight on. It's driveways that are still an issue with the coilovers, even fully maxed out on height. So just know that if you plan to do the coilovers that we talked about earlier, just account that you will scrape initially if you don't do some weight savings in the front. Another thing that helped out pretty big too was that originally my Michelin 4S's were a 245, 35, 18. And then after seeing a few reviews from tire reviews, they said that like the all season 4s were like 80 to 85% of the performance in the dry to the Michelin 4S's, and that the wet handling under a certain temperature was way better than the 4S's. So I just wanted to try it out. One, because it's cheaper, and I wanted to see how thin of a tire I could go with within reason for it to, one, cut down weight, but if the rubber compound is really sticky, then we don't need to go with a wider tire setup. One, it's money that we don't need to spend, and two, it's extra drag on the car. So I went down from a 245 35 18 to a 225 45 18. And that slight raise from the tire, along with all the weight savings, helped clear all of those speed bumps. So I would say it's a pretty good daily driver right now with the KW's fully lifted, the Souvenir GTS hood, the Wagner intercooler, and the 225 45 18. I might want to go in the future. I might want to go 235 35. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. But if anybody has different setups with their tires, as far as like clearing any speed bumps, please let me know. Let's see. Okay, Build Indian said that they just installed Dynan. Okay, that's the other company that I completely forgot about. The Dynan adjustable springs on the F80, and they're perfect. Dynan's also another really good brand. They won't really wow you with, I would say, like their exhaust. The sound isn't going to be the most aggressive. Their springs are also not going to be the most aggressive. I would say mostly that's because they're a California-based company, and they have to comply with a lot of the California rules and regulations. And so that's why a lot of their things are toned down. But because they work within those parameters, a lot of the things that they have work really well fit and finish wise. And as far as longevity, compatibility, comfort, I would say it's a really good middle ground to whatever mod that they offer, whether it be their tunes, their springs, their exhausts. If you want something that's like more aggressive than stock, but not over the top, still presentable in a professional setting, like if you're going to and from work, Dynan is a really good company to check all those boxes. Okay, Ice Bear can confirm that the Dynan springs are a good height. And okay, and then we have a question unrelated to the coilovers. We'll touch on that on the end, but just to answer your question really quick, the iDrive screen is holding up just fine. I'm still using it. It's probably like one of the first iterations for the 2 series, and it's still holding up. I actually used the GPS earlier today. And Ice Bear is saying that the perfect length, but way too thick. Okay, Ice Bear is saying, so back onto the topic of the coilovers, just so that we can finish this up, is that the Super Pro end links are a little bit too thick, so that will definitely be an issue. It's really the location, not just the height location, but the orientation of this end link mounting bracket right here. This makes it really hard for you to fit in like beefier end links. I would say SPL is going to be good enough. It might not look like it's like the beefiest construction when you compare it to other manufacturers out there, but you have to imagine that it's a hollow tube with a threaded rod in. So no matter what company's producing it, they can only add in so much strength before it becomes an issue as far as clearance right here. And if the height doesn't get it because of the thickness, the torsion stress will get it. Even with the SPL end links, you're going to have to get spacers as well. So not only do you have to get a shorter end link, but you're also going to have to have spacers to push it back from this bracket because of that torsional tension there. So just be aware of that. And SPL, when you call them, they'll supply the washers, they'll supply the correct length, body length of the end link. So the Turner will be able to help you out with all that stuff from SPL. Oh, so and as far as this is confusing. So the rep from SPL, his name is Turner. He's the one that you're going to want to ask for these end links. Now, different company, Turner Motorsports, they also have end links, and between just us, you will notice that their design is very similar to SPL, and that's because SPL makes those end links. They just coat them a different color. So price-wise, if you don't care about the color, You can look at the Turner ones, you can look at the SPL ones, and whichever one is on sale, just pick up that one because they are construction-wise the same thing. And so pairing that with lightweight modifications up front will definitely be helpful to clear those speed bumps and all those things. But if you're tracking your car, I mean, weight savings is also a good option. And I would also recommend, like an honorable mention, if you do track your car, the Wagner intercooler is a really good modification. One, because it saves weight compared to like other manufacturers, but because the tube and fin design, it's really good for cars that are sustaining a good flow of air through the bumper. If you're doing like short distance drives in like sprints almost, I would say that the bar and plate is better than the tube and fin just because it has time to cool down. But if you're doing more sustained drives, once it heat soaks, it does hold on to that heat a little bit more than the tube and fin. And because of that compact design, that's what allows it, the compact design of the bar and plate is what allows it to be more resistant to absorbing heat initially. But the open pattern of the tube and fin is what allows it to cool off faster with that free flow of air. So it really depends on the type of driving that you do. Now, the third one is going to be the Mosselman oil thermostat. This one, I would say it's a good modification if you're already going to do the gaskets. Just because this job is a bit of a pain because you have to drain a little bit of oil, you have to drain a little bit of coolant. The oil isn't that big of an issue. It's the coolant. And almost like every car, it's hard to predict how the coolant is going to flow. It's just a mess. But at least with the N55 behind the driver's front wheel, you pull out that wheel well liner and then you can just disconnect that auxiliary hose there and it drains out pretty cleanly. The only thing that you need to do is loosen up the bleed screw at the top and just let it flow out for like a few seconds. You don't need like the whole thing or even half of it. I would say let it drain, loosen that screw, count to 3, and then you should be fine because we only need the coolant to be below that top level of the hose that we're going to remove. That will feed into the oil filter housing, which is like right around here on the thermostat. In respect to the oil filter housing. And the reason why this one made the list is because I would say it's not worth it if you're doing it without the gaskets. Just wait until you do the gaskets because this operates just like the OEM thermostat where it will let you get to temp as regular. And then as soon as, you get to operating temps, it opens up sooner to allow the oil to go down to the oil cooler. So it's not like it cools the system more effectively, it just opens up sooner so that your oil cooler can dissipate that heat better. And this is really good for turbocharged cars because turbocharged cars, they house a lot of heat. And if you don't have something like a GTS hood that can help scavenge that unnecessary heat, then it's going to cause unnecessary wear to the gaskets that are behind this and that are associated with the rest of the car. This is why we have other issues with gaskets like the gaskets that are right up here, as well as the oil filter housing gasket. So there's 3 sets of gaskets that I would say to replace with this job. Just replace them all. You're already there. Everything's going to be opened up. And they do go bad around, like, depending on how hard you drive and the length of your drives, it could go anywhere bad from like 40 to 60,000 miles, if you're lucky 70. So just go ahead and do them all at once. But other issues that we have are like valve cover gaskets. The oil pan gasket is a little bit less because there is some good free flowing air down there. But heat is one of the contributing factors to these gaskets going bad because the heat causes them to harden up. They're less pliable, and then they start to crack under pressure and all those things that are associated with heat cycling. But it's not as bad as the plastic components like the charge pipe, just because the rubber is a softer material. So it does take time for it to break. It's not like you could just break out of nowhere like the charge pipe. So I would say, hopefully, I can't say it for now, but hopefully, because we're sending oil down to the oil cooler sooner, and because of the GTS hood, we're getting rid of that, all that extra heat. And because of that, hopefully it allows our gaskets to last a little bit longer. I'm not saying like it's going to be an extra 50,000 miles, but maybe 10,000, 20,000, depending on your type of driving. And that's like postponing it by like a year or two if you're lucky. So not having to do this job for another year or two, I would say it's worth it. It's definitely worth it in your time. Now, as far as everything that we've talked about so far, we've given a lot of love to the M235i and the N55 chassis, but we also did quite a bit of work on the F30 this year and the N26 engine. And that one had the stock halogen headlights. And one of the best upgrades that I've done to that car, especially because it's for my dad, visibility is very important to somebody of his age. And I'm very happy that I went with the LCI LED retrofit headlights for that car. These headlights alone, just out of the box, are brighter than the projector style that we did on the white F30 about 2 years ago. Now, of course, you could get brighter headlights and put them into the projector style lamp, and it will be brighter than this. But just straight out of the box, this is much brighter. Now, I know that some people had some issues with these lights as well as a projector. So the issue with the projector is they are not being manufactured anymore. And so finding them and distributing them has been an issue. I think if they're on sale on the website still, everything is going to be linked down in the description. But if they're available, just go ahead and pick them up. They should be clear to go. But if they're not available now, they might not ever be available again, because I think everybody is going to this LCI version of the headlights, and even some manufacturers are going to the Icon style of headlights. So Icon is a very good, reputable brand. They look very good, aggressive. Bay Optics also has their headlight kit. The only downfall is that it's very expensive. So I'm working very closely with SV Bimmer to kind of cut out the middleman, go directly to the manufacturer, and be able to provide something similar in terms of quality and looks. And that should be up very, very soon. We're actually testing another set of headlights on the F30 right now that look very similar to this. And we were able to coat out this yellow portion at the top of the eyebrow. If you like it, you can keep it. But we were able to coat that out, and then through about a month's worth of testing, no check engine lights, no error codes or anything like that. The weatherproofing has been really good. It's been raining quite a bit here in California. So I'm up here in the Bay Area, and if you've seen some of the news that we have quite a bit of flooding, it's true. Especially near my house, there's a underpass, and it is completely flooded. Just to test out how good these headlights are, I didn't drive like in the flooded section, but I pass by with that section of the tire just to like let water get in this area, and then the headlights are still holding up just fine. So through all that heavy rain, those headlights are fine. And then I'll probably switch them out in about a week or so, and then we're going to test the other set of headlights. And if those hold up, those will be replacing the projector style and this LCI LED headlight version that we have now. But everything is going to be the same. It's going to be all plug and play, no coating unless you don't want that orange portion out there. But you could just do it with like Bimmer coat or something like that. And then you just have to tell the computer in some cases, I haven't figured out the sticking point yet, but in some cases, you do have to tell the computer that you're running LED lights versus halogen lights. I think it's just a safety mechanism for the car in terms of heat. So if it gets too hot, like it'll shut off or it will send you the warning. So just so that the temperature monitor is accurate, you have to, in some cases, let the car know that it's running LED headlights versus halogen. And so be on the lookout for that in the near future. The link that I have in the description right now, as soon as we've run full testing on the headlights, the links will still be good. You'll just be getting the newer version of those headlights once we're able to conclude the R&D. Let's see if we have a couple more questions on this. Ice Bear, how's my front lip holding up? It is not. I mean, the guards are pretty much falling off, but it's definitely cracked. It's taken a beating, but as far as the mounting locations and the double-sided tape, it's holding up just fine. It's the guards that are starting to pull away from the lip because of the double-sided tape, because it's scraped too much. Over soft tools. All right. Okay. Bill the Indian is saying, let's see here. Okay, let's see if I can do this. All right, there we go. Let's see here. Okay, let's do that. So Bill the Indian is saying that SPL is the best as far as the end link. So I think I know what the most popular thing is going to be today. It's going to be the coilovers. Okay, you have to take off in eco mode in the wet to avoid spinning the rears. That is... Do you mind me asking what tires you're running? Because I usually take off in Sport Plus and it's perfectly fine. In the 4S's and the all-season 4s. Let's see here. Okay, so we have some questions here that I'm going to save for the Q&A. But if there's nothing on these headlights, we'll move on to the next one. And this is what's probably going to round us off. And this is going to be the MRG Race Co. wheel studs. And you don't have to get these ones. Yes, these are the ones that I got, and I went with the titanium version and all that good stuff. The reason why I went with this is because I've seen a bunch of videos as far as wheel stud conversion kits, people installing it, and no one's really done like a titanium one, or at least like one that's like mainstream. I know that people have done them, but they just hasn't been a video on them. And then if people did want to go with this option, I wanted to be able to try to help people be able to afford it. So in the description, there's going to be a discount code there. Just go ahead and use it if this is what you want. I know a lot of people have discount codes with like Apex or even I think it's Motorsports Hardware. And I have a friend who tracks their car, and I forget which one, but they said that as soon as that finish comes off, which doesn't take too much, especially if you're tracking your car, it corrodes very quickly, and then it becomes very difficult to, you know, exchange your wheels because of the corrosion. I believe they said that the Apex coating is really good. I think you referred to it like black magic. Like it's so good, the coating, and it just holds on well. If anybody has any other experiences and can speak to that, please let me know. The titanium ones, they should not have any issues like that whatsoever. And yes, they are much more expensive. But I would say, like, if you're tracking your car, you're trying to save as much weight as possible, you're trying to make it as fast in your pit stop as much as possible, then you have to go titanium. Just studs in general, they're easier to change out, faster to change out than bolts. The only thing faster I would see is like center locks. And then if you're looking to save as much weight as possible, you're shedding quite a good amount of weight by going to this setup. Now, to tell you the truth, the OEM bolts are lighter than this. It's not until you get to extended lugs that these become lighter. So if you're going to track your car and you're going to a wider wheel setup and you want to have that extra hold, and you do go to longer length bolts or studs, then that's where these titanium studs will be lighter weight than bolts only on the extended version. But OEM length, these are actually going to weigh a little bit more. And they do make titanium bolts that are the lightest option out there. So if you're tracking your car for like yourself personally, you don't really have to account for the pit stops, then the lightest weight setup as far as your locking mechanism for your wheel is going to be titanium bolts by far. The good thing is that although a lot of manufacturers will say that you can't use impact tools with them, MRG just said that you can't use air impacts with these, but using something like the Milwaukee 1/2 inch impact is going to be perfectly fine for this. So the one that you've seen me use on the car time in and time out, that they said that specific drill is perfectly fine to put on the nut for these. You just don't want to be impacting it all day, but it's something that you wouldn't do even with the stock configuration, because once it's tight, that hammering action starts, you usually let off and then you finish it off with a torque wrench. So whether you're removing them or putting them on, you can use that 1/2 inch impact and it'll be perfectly fine for this. Let's see what other questions we have here today. Okay, so I think we are on our Q&A section. And if I'm unable to get to anybody today, if you think of something later on down the line, you can reach out to me on Instagram or TikTok at VroomTuber, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. So some questions that we have here is, have I ever used Pro Tool? I was thinking about it, especially when I just put in the anti-gravity battery to code that battery in. The only issue is I feel that Pro Tool is pretty expensive for what it offers, and I already have Beamer code. So I just picked up Beamer Link for like $100. I think like the full license for Pro Tool is like upwards of 150, or like for each license. I forget how much it is for like the complete package, but because I already had Beamer code, I didn't want to drop another 100 plus on a mobile app coder. So I just went with Beamer Link, which is like the sister app to Beamer code. But I've heard good things about it. I think Jake Spence uses that one. And then the other thing too is that I also have the Launch C Reader Elite. So having that with Beamer code, I really didn't want to drop that much more on another coder, because I felt like I had like 2/3 of the solution ready to go, and I just needed a little bit more with Beamer Link. And to tell you the truth, I probably really didn't need to buy Beamer Link with the C Reader Elite, but just having something on my phone and that Bluetooth adapter always being in my car is just a nice convenience. The C Reader Elite, I just leave that at home because I don't want to be lugging it around all the time. It is technically an Android device, and so I didn't really want it like banging around in the car every single day. It's something that I just keep in my tool drawer at home, and when I need it, pull it out, use it, and then throw it back in the drawer. Okay, and then here we go. So this one was about the screen. So the screen was one of the first modifications that we ever did on the M235i. That one, I feel like it wasn't necessarily like a prototype screen, but it definitely was one of the first Android iterations for BMWs. I would say most of these companies, including Bimmertech, probably get them from the same source. And probably Bimmertech just runs a little bit more QC behind it to make sure that everybody gets a good item. I think like some of these ones that you're probably getting direct from the manufacturer, they don't run the QC as much. So if it's a bad item, you just send it back. They'll send you another one, and hopefully the second one comes back good for you. But I would say that most of these are probably made in the same manufacturing plant, and the only difference by getting it from one of those places versus um, what is it? Oh my goodness, I just said it too. Like a name brand company, is that the name brand company will do the QC for you, and they'll ensure that you actually get a good tested item on the first try. But the company that I recommended, they're good. I've had other people get like defective units or units that didn't work quite as well as they wanted. They sent it back. They got another one, and the second one worked out just fine. Okay, Build Indian said that he just installed a carbon fiber lip this weekend and is now afraid to drive the car. Don't be. If you want one of my friends, he's so over carbon fiber lips, he just gets like plastic ones that are like hydro dipped. And I think he said that he buys them in bulk from eBay for like, I think he's exaggerating, but he said something like, yeah, I buy like 200. I buy like 10 for $200 or something like that. And then when they go bad, I just swap them out. He's completely over carbon fiber lips, but carbon fiber lips, they do look good. Don't be afraid to use it. If you scrape, just remember it's usually like the bottom portion that scrapes. And then if it cracks, honestly, from far away, and this could just be because I have bad eyesight, it still looks good. There's like huge cracks in my souvenir lip. And I would say across like a driveway or something, like if you're on the opposite side of the street, like even a small street, like a 2-lane street, you're not going to see it. It's still going to look really, really good. Unless like it's hanging off. Only then does it really look bad. Like the guards that I was telling you about on the bottom, that looks pretty bad. But the lip itself still looks really good. So I would say like you put a lot of work into your car. Don't be afraid to drive it. That's what, it's made for, and that's probably why you got it, to enjoy it. So don't be afraid to enjoy it. If it gets nicked up a little bit, that's just the nature of being a car enthusiast. Okay, let's see. I think we had some other questions earlier. Okay. Oh, Bimmertech. That was the company I was thinking about. Oh, Bimmertech doesn't make one for the M235i. That does kind of suck. My install is on the Kosan website. They haven't given me any money, but I didn't even know they had a website. I thought it was just the Amazon store. Oh, wow. Okay. I mean, that's pretty cool. Well, I mean, I guess they're happy with it and the install was good enough. Honestly, that's one of the first install videos that I ever did. And I mean, I'm happy that they liked it. Looking back at it, I definitely would do some things differently, but it definitely helped me make those improvements later on. So I am happy that I did make it. I did get started, but if I were to do it again, I hope I would definitely make some quality improvements along the way. And Kenny, I appreciate that. I really do. I would say maybe there are definitely a lot of people on forums that I feel like are more knowledgeable on the 2 series than me. I was just fortunate enough to put it to video. So um, if you want to see some like really in-depth techie stuff, some really big brain stuff, the 2 series forum, you'll definitely want to check that out. Once you land on there, you'll see that a lot of things that I do on YouTube, it's very surface level, but I do appreciate it. And I hope that I can deliver the same amount of quality content that you've grown to expect. And then back to the Android screens. Android 11, I actually don't know what I'm on right now. I think I still have the Snapdragon one, which, I mean, I've had the 2 series for at least 4 years now. So it's definitely an old version. But I'm not going to sit here and say that, I watch movies or anything like that. I don't really push the processor too hard. I would say more or less it's just navigation that I really use that Android section for. Everything else, my everything else, basically, I would say if your stock unit can do it, Bluetooth calls, playing music through, Spotify or whatever app you like to run it through that OEM segment. Running it through the Android side of the head unit can get pretty wonky, especially when it comes to balancing out the volume. The OEM system is always going to be better if it's available. But honestly, the OEM navigation is terrible. So that's why I go with like Waze or whatever on the Android side. So if your car offers it, if your car has it, run that feature through your car, and then whatever you don't have, run it through the Android side. Is there significantly more fuel usage post getting a tune? Not much. I was probably averaging like 20 miles, 22 tops back then. I would say the other thing too is when you get a tune, you're usually going to drive more aggressive as well. So it's not just that you got a tune, but it's also because you're driving more aggressively, you're using more gas. But because I use the car a lot, like for work, like driving to and from work, like right now, like I'm in my office at work, and it just so happens that not a lot of people are here. If you can hear that there's some construction in the office behind me, but like I leave the office pretty late now, just because I hate driving in traffic, and I can come into work a little bit later if I stay a little bit later, type of thing. So when I drive home, I usually like to throw on a podcast, something about like, how to build wealth, or like how to grow better or make better videos on YouTube. I listen to a podcast like that. So I usually like to just cruise in Eco Pro. So I'll get to my final drive. I'll get to 6 speed, and then I'll cruise at like 75 on cruise control all the way home until I finish my podcast. And I have a pretty relaxed drive. I would say that I still average like 21, 20. So for me, driving on the freeway, it's like a clear stretch of maybe about like 20 miles. So full tank usually gets me like a week or so, depending on how much I do of work from home. And then, yeah, with the Eco Pro cruise control, I still net about the same. Okay, here we go. So you want the Google Maps and no bubbles from the screen. I can tell you right now, like Kowasan, in terms of their their screen for the 2 or the 3 series, it's been holding up just fine. No issues whatsoever, no bubbling or anything like that. And the 2 series is always parked outside, and the 3 gets in the garage, but it's only been about 2 years for that one. So I would say Kosan's a good brand. Besides, you still get the 1-year manufacturer warranty. If it comes out defective, then fine. I actually still have the original screen protector on there, so it looks more scratched up if you ever see it in videos, but that's the screen protector. Give me 1 second. I think my camera just died. Okay, and we should be back up now. Awesome. Okay, so I hope that helps you and instill some confidence in going with like Kosan versus like Bimmertech. It's going to save you a little bit of money, but if you don't need the online support and all that, I would say it's pretty good. If you're just going to use it for something simple like maps, just go with Kosan. It's going to last a long time. You can put that money that you saved into something else that you need, and you'll be just as happy. And Shane is saying that they installed full SPL on their 435i and it feels loose. It should, unless something wasn't torqued down all the way, it should feel pretty tight. Like your steering response should be more precise before there's like a little bit of give, because there is the electronic steering rack versus the hydraulic. But once you put in those SPL arms, like if you move that steering wheel a little bit, it'll move the wheels a little bit, at least in my case. And I only have the thrust arm and the lower control arm. I don't have the tie rod. My friend who did the tie rod said that the improvement is very minimal. And unless your current tie rod is bad, it's not worth doing. It's not worth the money if you don't need it. And as far as fitment goes, like getting things to fit in there, camber, caster wise, the stock one is going to be just fine. So I would say double check that everything was tightened down correctly to spec. The other thing is you should have some washers to properly gap that that nut that goes onto the knuckle. I would say ensure that, you know, the proper amount of washers were used and then go from there. But it should not feel loose, especially when you compare it to OEM, because your OEM one, especially if you bought your car used, will have more play with it. Those are monoball bushings, so there should be no play in them whatsoever. And Nathan, no problem. Happy to help. And the Cregan, I forgot who was asking about the tune. Oh, Nathan. Okay. So Nathan, here we go. Here's someone else who can also speak. Cregan, actually, their car is more tuned than mine because they are just under 400. I'm pretty sure I'm running maybe 350. I actually don't know. Whatever the stock horsepower is, add a little bit more because of the tune and the downpipe. So, I mean, I haven't done anything crazy. So maybe just tack on like a touch more for my car. But I know that 400 is definitely considerably more than mine. And if you're getting 21 in yours, I mean, that's good. So the tune doesn't really matter. It's your driving pattern that's going to weigh the most as far as your fuel consumption. And Kenny, how did I pay for the HK tweeter housing? I'm looking to upgrade my base speaker setup and want to add on the tweeters like you did, based in California. So all that I did was you can go to your dealership and see if they'll hook you up and give you a discount on you have to buy the whole housing along with the tweeter speaker installed. That's how it comes. So you can't buy the tweeter separate from the grill. everything comes as one unit, and then you just pop out the OEM tweeter, put in the BeamerTech one, and you're good to go. You can check with the SV Bimmer website. I think I included it in that video. Go ahead and check out pricing there, compare it to the dealer, your local dealership, ECS, any one of those places should be able to get you exactly what you need. And that's how you do it. The only thing is, if you have a 3 or a 4 series, you have to buy that whole trim that stretches across the window. Oh no, it's the 3 series. I'm sorry. The 4 series is just like the 2. It has the frameless window. But the 3, you have to buy that whole thing, and it is much more expensive. If you can, honestly, when I did it originally, I looked on eBay, Facebook Marketplace. If you can find it used and the tabs are all still good, just do it like that. Honestly, if money is of a concern, get it used, and even if some of the tabs are missing, just double side tape it in there, because once you push in that foam, it's not going anywhere anyways. And it's not like a lot of bass comes through there. The only thing that you have to worry about is the opening and closing, like that shock pattern going, but because you have the foam pressing up against it, it should hold. Oh, okay. And it's turbo inlet pipe. Yes. So, oops. So in terms of money saved, the turbo inlet pipe, I would say N55, N20, definitely worth the money. I actually just dislike everything after the air box. I dislike this plastic. So the turbo inlet pipe, the intercooler, charge pipe, boost pipe. Well, the boost pipe is rubber. But if you're there doing the intercooler, you might as well just replace it with a metal one if you can. Other than the intake piping, like the actual box and that pipe that feeds into the turbo inlet, I hate everything else that's plastic because it cracks, because it's further down in there. It's more prone to that heat soak. It gets more brittle faster, and it's subject to more pressurized air, especially the turbo inlet that's in contact with the turbo. So yes, I definitely recommend doing it. It's just a pain securing that 10 millimeter nut if you go with MST, but it gives you that peace of mind that it's not going anywhere. And the Kriegen. How common is the HK package in the US compared to here in Australia? I'm actually not sure. My car is just a base package. Yeah, actually, I don't know the answer to that. I would say it's more common in the 3 and the 4 series because the 2 is the base model, and more people turn into a track car, and more people are driving enthusiasts. They don't really care about the interior sound. And so I would say it's less common in the 2 series, but more common in the 3s and the 4s. Almost, especially when you get up there. So like the 335s, 435s, 430s, things like that. Maybe like base model, the 428s, 328s don't have it as much, but even my dad's 328, it has the HKs. Loud noises. How much power can an M235i safely handle? I cannot speak to this, but just going off of what the Kriegen is saying, he was saying that his car is just under 400 horsepower, and it sounds like it's pretty reliable, but correct me if I'm wrong. But if you're doing 400 horsepower, just under 21 miles per gallon, that's still a pretty good daily. So I would say that that's fairly reliable. And everything that I've seen on forums as far as like what people do to the car, you know, I haven't done anything crazy. I haven't even done an exhaust yet. But if you do exhaust, if you do injectors, all those things, you tune it correctly. I've seen a lot of people do 400 a little bit more, and it still hold up pretty reliable. The N55 overall is a pretty reliable engine. It does have less potential than an N54, but that's a trade-off that you get for that reliability. Okay, and the Cregan is saying that the 240s had it all standard. That's pretty nice. Well, that's also because I'm assuming, I can't say for sure, but I'm assuming that the reason why the 240s had it all standard and maybe it's all the 40s is because that is like the premium lineup just before you get into the M cars. I'm just assuming. I can't say for sure, but that's what I would think. Marketing wise, it makes sense. Okay, just picked up a 228i M Sport in Port Orange, Florida. All right. Oh, congratulations. Welcome to the 2 Series community. Tag me in a story. I'd love to see it. And, the 2 Series community, it's what we lack for in raw numbers, we make up for in enthusiasm. So definitely look up a bunch of stuff in forums, ask questions even on the YouTube videos that I've made or other people have made. Dig through that comment section. People are usually eager to help. Just because we know that we don't have a big support system out there, we will support our own. So welcome to the community. I'm happy that you're here. Beery, I did a charge pipe, boost pipe, VRSF intercooler. Definitely feel more secure driving. Okay, yes, all those things definitely do help. Even people that say that VRSF is like cheap, to a certain extent, yes, I can see the point. Like, it's not finished or whatever, but I mean, I put VRSF stuff on my car, especially for like the piping. It's just a pipe. Like, as long as it's cut right, and it is, it'll hold up just fine. The intercooler is where a lot of R&D and tech goes in. But even that VRSF intercooler is really good. There's virtually no boost lag, even if you go up to the bigger version. So I think there's 3 iterations. I can speak to the first upgrade as well as the middle version. I didn't try the race version, but with that intermediate upgrade version, no turbo lag. So I think it's one of the best bang for your bucks that you can get out there, especially for somebody who just wants to upgrade the piping. Like, you don't have to do the intercooler, just kind of like while you're there. But that piping, VRSF is definitely perfectly fine to run. And I think anything else, honestly, it's bragging rights. Like, there's not the VRSF stuff in the car that I have right now. It's holding up just fine. So you're also going to be just fine. Plus, you have the lifetime warranty. So you can feel, I hope that makes you feel even more secure driving your car. Okay, and the 2016 M235i that you have has the HK setup in there. Okay, the Korean, you have a 240, not an M235i, my apologies. And you're saying that people can reliably run upwards of 600 on the 235. Good to know. Good to know. This is exactly what I was talking about, the 2 Series community. We will take care of our own despite our lack of support from the outside world. So thank you so much for your input there. I appreciate it. What are the next plans for the car? Shane is asking. Right now, I just put in an anti-gravity battery. I'm testing it out. They say that it can save upwards of 70% of weight from the stock one, and it's very true. I just ran the math on it. Going down from like 58 pounds to like 18, that came out to like 68.2% of a weight reduction. And it also has cool features in there, like the the jump start feature. It has the overcharge protection built in, because it runs on a lower amp hour. So I think for coding wise, at least everything that I've seen so far, the lowest I can go down is 70, but it's a 60 amp hour battery. So having that built-in tech that can prevent overcharging is good. And then if you don't have a jumper yet, you can put that money towards this battery, and it will jump itself. Even if the charge on the battery is low, it will save enough in the reserve to jump you a few times to get you back home. And it does cost a little bit more. So I will be making a video out on this shortly, but it does cost a little bit more. But the good thing is that it's supposed to last a little bit more than twice as long and delivers more than twice the power with a less amp hour battery. And you also get this auto start feature. You also get the auto protect feature on it for the overcharging. So if you're looking to drop weight and willing to front up the money for like 2 batteries in one go, I would say that it's worth it. Cregan, I appreciate you so much for chiming in all of your insight here. Thank you so much. So you're saying that the 40 series cars here sell in such low volume. You're talking about in Australia, they sell in such low volume that they barely give you options to choose from. So I would assume, like marketing wise, that if they're going to give you very few of those 40 series, that they would want them to kind of be like the best impressions. So potentially in your case, in your region, they would probably want them to be as spec'd out as they can, or at least as much as like it makes sense monetarily wise. To a certain extent too, all of the cars have all the same wiring harnesses in them. It's just, are they connected to anything and are they coded in? So it's not like they're doing anything all that much more extra to put in these premium features. But like if the wiring harness is there and all that it takes is a little bit piece of hardware and coding, and if on the factory line they're just pumping them out like that, plus when you talk about them, or when people in Australia talk about them, they're like, oh, the 40 series is like the best thing ever because you get all these extra features and it's so much cheaper than an M car. So marketing wise, it's probably a good thing. But now I'm a little jealous of you too. Okay, and Shane is, I think, if nobody has anything else, Shane is coming in with our last question of the day. And thank you everybody for chiming in your questions, and I hope that this was a productive session for everybody. And then if you have any questions about anything else, again, you can reach out to me on VroomTuber, whether it be on Instagram or TikTok. Since I started doing short form content on YouTube, I will admit there are quite a bit of people who troll in the comment section. A lot of people who I would say just kind of upset with the world and reflect that in their comments. So I do apologize if I haven't been able to get to a lot of people who I normally would get back to in the comment section, but just the amount of comments that come in through that shorts feed, and YouTube has yet to really be able to let us filter that out. Commenting in videos like questions, like productive questions like this, have been hard for me to get to. So if you can, attend more of the live streams, and hopefully we can get a good session like this where I can really answer some questions for people who have real concerns. And then if I don't, then I have somebody here like the Cregan who's like chiming in like money over here with everything that I can't answer. It seems like this guy, he's got the answer to it. So whether you have questions or you feel like you can answer questions that I can't, I appreciate everybody who's coming in. So Shane, your question: do you think strut bars and sway bars are worth adding if you don't track your car? I have an OG M2. For the money. So for the money, I would do coilovers, sway bars, then the strut bar. Strut bars last One, because it offers the least impact. Just because it's like, as far as like what it can control, it's very limited. That's why it doesn't do much for you. But also, whenever you do jobs like the Mosselman oil thermostat, you need to change out your spark plugs, anything. The strut bar gets in the way. I wanted to do the M carbon fiber strut bar just like for fun. Like, I love tinkering around with the cars and things like that. It's not like, oh, like it looks cool. It's just like, for me, it's a challenge, and I want to challenge myself, and in that process I have fun. But honestly, now that the challenge is done, I've done it, like it was fun working on it. It is such a hassle to remove every single time I need to do something on the car. And then, of course, being in the shop as much as I have, I mean, I'm not a mechanic, but just going to the shop, making the videos, I've seen so many people break those plastic flanges where the bolts go through. It's not just a hassle that you have to put on the strut bar every single time, but I feel like if you don't torque it down to spec every time, it'll either come loose and be ineffective. And then because the clearance there is so little, you don't want to scratch the top of the hood, like if that bolt backs out. And then two, if you over tighten it, you'll break that plastic flange. So it is such a headache to do. If you don't really care like about like you don't want to do the retrofit for whatever reason, you could just go with an aluminum one or a metal one that goes across the top that connects the two strut towers, and that's fine. That'll cut down your headache quite a bit, because honestly, you could just take an impact and just like buzz it twice, and that'll be good enough. Like, you don't need to torque it down to spec every single time. But if you have that carbon fiber strut brace, oh my goodness, it's a hassle. Sway bars are sway bars are worth it if it's on sale. I would honestly recommend, yes, I know that the coilovers are more expensive. If you want to save some money on the coilovers, code out the EDC and get V2s. If you don't need that adjustability, get the V1s. But I think V2s is going to satisfy most people who want some adjustability out there but want to save some money. And then you can take it to like your local BMW specialist, and they'll code out the EDC for you. That's going to be the best way to go as far as suspension. And then if you can catch those sway bars on a reasonable sale, not just like 5% off, something like that. You want a pretty good sale on them. Like, even like scratch and dent item is going to be good because they're just a metal bar. You could spray paint it, and because of where it's going, you're never really going to see it again. So if money's an issue, just save up for coilovers. Some people said that the Dynon springs were good too. I can't speak to them, but if you're willing to sacrifice some of the comfort of your ride, and you don't care that you're going to reduce some of the longevity out of your stock struts, go with springs first, save up for coilovers, get the coilovers. And then once you have them in, then you'll know, like, for sure, if you need sway bars. If you take a pretty hard turn, like a downshift from fourth to second, and you hang a turn, and if you feel too lifted, that's when you need sway bars. If your coilovers are still making you feel lifted at that point, then you get the sway bars. Other than that, if you don't catch them on a good sale, $1,000 is pretty rough. Sway bar, a couple $100, maybe. But again, that one, buy used. I see no point in dropping that much money. The M strut brace was like close to 1,000. It's almost 5,000 if you buy everything new. But I bought everything used, and I was able to like get by like 800, 700, something like that. And again, for me, I knew that there wasn't going to be much performance behind it. It was just like, I want to have some fun. Is this worth my fun? Like some people like going out, you know, partying or whatever, like working on stuff like this is my fun. So I was like, yeah, this is worth $700 worth of fun and it'll give me some performance. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, so we do actually have a few more questions coming in right now. Yep, no problem. I appreciate you being here as well and asking all the questions. I know you are not the only person with these questions. Some people are just too shy to ask the questions. So I appreciate you being brave enough to answer the questions on your behalf as well as others. Let's see here. Dada is asking, oh, I missed your question. Oh, I'm sorry about that. On clutch bleeding up top. Let me see if I can find that. Let me see. Dada, I'm going to apologize because I am using this software for live stream for probably only the second time. And they curate all the chats for me. I do not see your question in here. Nope. Sorry. Correction. Here we go. Here is your question. Thank you for making me look for that. Hey, brother. Followed up your video on the clutch delay valve removal and currently stuck on bleeding my clutch. Brake fluid won't come out from the bottom with my motive pressure bleeder at 25 psi. Okay. I would say try bumping it just a touch more, maybe to like 28 or 30. And you're gonna, if you're doing this solo, have good lighting and put your phone there and record the line and then pump the clutch. And then I would say pump it really fast and aggressively. Like I would say go for like 20 to 30 times if you can. It sounds ridiculous, but you will have to pump it quite a bit. You should notice in that process a touch of loss in pressure and perhaps even a loss in travel in the clutch. But also once you get towards the end of that 20 to 30 clutch dumps, you should feel that range of motion return and resistance return. When you do, this is going to be the tricky part. You actually, your only option if you're doing it solo is you're just going to have to let up. Tighten the wrench where the line is, check your phone, make sure that fluid actually came out, and then try pumping back up pressure until you get to that 28-30 mark. And then hopefully when you reopen the line, just that touch of air bubbles that are left from when you let up on the clutch come out and then tighten it back up. That's what I would recommend. But it should be, even at 25, it should be fine. But just try hitting the clutch with the pressure up a bit more. Okay. Khaled, how's it going? Parker the Rapper. Want to stop by and say thank you. From an F22 owner, your videos are a lifesaver in all aspects and so enjoyable to watch. Shouts out from Sacramento. Oh, you're from Sacramento. You should look up. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I appreciate the community so much. But thank you so much for your kind words. As I was telling everybody earlier, I'm just kind of putting some of these stuffs together. But if you really want to see some in-depth things, check out the forums. You'll see that everything that I do here is very surface level. And you'll be like, oh, that's like a bunch of basic stuff. But if you're in Sacramento, you should look up F22 Nation. I think he's around in your area too. So he's the guy that has the Instagram page of like most of the 2 Series stuff out there. You guys should link up. I met him at the car show at Weekfest a while ago. Cool guy. Now, let's see here. Texas tags. Just picked up an E92. Right on. I just filmed for SV Bimmer an E92 that put on a G82 wing. Congratulations. Awesome. I'm so happy for you. The E92. I mean, I don't know what it is, but if you were to tell me like one of the 3 series has a V8 in it, like the E90, E92, it has that look to go along with it as well. Like the F80, I feel like it doesn't. It has like that futuristic, like refined kind of like, I don't know how to say it. I guess like a modern day business person type of thing, where it's not like somebody like that couldn't have a V8, but usually, you know, somebody like that to and from work, they want something less noticeable, something a little bit more presentable, I would say. But that E92, like the looks of the E92 with that engine, I think they just go hand in hand together. And then once you take care of those rod bearings, like solid. Congrats, man. Yeah, you're gonna love that car. I've just driven one around like here and there, but it's a great car. Okay, Shane, you're saying that someone is actually selling both front and rear for $500. What brand is that? If it's Turner, scoop that up. That is a good deal. I apologize. There's construction in the back. But that is a good deal. I don't even know. Like so the thing too is Turner, yes, they are the thickest sway bars for the 2 series. But getting that sucker in there is incredibly tough. It's hard to explain unless you do the job. But if you've seen other people, I think there's only 2 other people that have really done the sway bar installs cleanly on YouTube, and I think they went with H&R or another company. Those sway bars are much thinner than Turner's, and they had a much easier time than I did, and I think the size of that matters. The front, if you do it, it's fine. It's not that bad. You have a little bit more wiggle room because everything is pretty much flat in the front as far as like the shape of the car, the shape of the subframe. It's very flat. So you just stick it through and then you jostle it a little bit and you're good to go. The rear has this hump, and having the thicker sway bar clear that hump without having to fully drop the subframe, by also having to manage your brake sensor, your wheel sensor, and then not overloading your jack or having your jack be imbalanced, while still having it partially threaded in for that extra support up top. The thick sway bars are a pain in the rear. And honestly, the rear, even before the coilovers, were so minimal. I did the front install, drove it around like that. That's the biggest impact. When you put the rear on, especially in the 2 series, because it's such a small chassis, it's very minimal. When you put on the coilovers, it's like infinitesimal. So if those sway bars that you're about to pick up are H&Rs and you already have coilovers or you plan to get them, that's a good deal. I would say that's almost a good deal no matter what the brand is. The only thing is to make sure you get the poly bushings so that you don't have to torque the sway bars at ride height, because that's also a huge pain, because the subframe gets in the way of you trying to torque it down with the end links there. So the end links don't give you much room to get in a torque wrench because of the subframe on the bottom section. The top section is perfectly fine. You shouldn't have any issues. That's a good deal. iBox Springs. iBox also another good company. Man, dude, Cregan, you're spitting fire right now, man. Thank you so much. iBox, if I'm not mistaken, iBox and MSS are partnered together to produce those springs that I was telling you guys about. So iBox is definitely a good brand to go with and one that you can trust. They've been around for a long time. So strong brand, reputable brand, and they're doing new innovative things with MSS. Good one. Okay, Shane, so you were mentioning the sway bar, so good. We're still on pace with that. And Shane, you also have the iBox springs. How do you like them? And do they make them in an adjustable fashion? I'm talking about just like the regular iBox springs that are not associated with MSS. Dada. Thank you. Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. And all the way from Vancouver. All right. Well, you are actually the second person that I know from Canada now. The other person, I haven't seen him on the live streams here yet, but that's awesome. So that's one of the great things that I love about like YouTube and forums and things like that. We can connect wherever. We're not limited to our region. Awesome. So I hope that helps you with the brake bleeding, and if not, just let me know. I'm Parker the Rapper. F22 Nation is your homie. Oh, you have a video? Okay, I will. I'm going to go check that out. I'll go check that out as soon as I'm done here. Okay, cool. Small world, but not so small considering that he's a pretty big figure in the 2 Series community. So I am happy that you guys are linked up. That's awesome. Okay, Texas Tags. Used to have an E93. I loved it, but definitely rather have the hard top now. If you're in California with the rain, I would prefer the hard top too. Convertible is great when the weather is good, but when the weather is terrible and it starts to get cold, you want that hard top. You definitely don't want the wind blowing in your hair in those type of weather. Okay, Shane. Okay? Those are H&Rs. Yeah, if they have the poly bushings, go ahead and pick those up. That's a good deal. Get the poly bushings. Get some silicone grease. You're good to go. Those will be good. Yeah. I forget his name. It starts with like an F, like far something. He has a F30 wagon. He did the H&R install. It went by a lot smoother than in my video. He didn't have to lower the subframe as much, especially in the rear. So if you're going to do that yourself, check out his video too. And generally speaking, I would say like install videos, don't ever rely on like one source, like whether it's me or anybody else. Like even if it's a small channel, just having all these different viewing angles of the job, no 2 creators, especially for cars, are going to set up their cameras in the exact same position at the exact same height with the exact same camera direction. So having the full 360 view of any job is going to be beneficial for you. And I'm just, happy that I can be one of those viewing angles for you guys. So Shane, once you get those installed, let me know how you like them. Cregan. Okay, iBox springs are non-adjustable. Okay, that's what I was thinking. But I mean, they're pretty good for what they are. And at least it takes some of the guesswork out of it too. And you also don't have that additional hardware to worry about as well. Or like anything moving on you or anything like that. You just know that you throw these on, everything's going to be level and you're good to go. Okay, so Shane has some input on his iBox springs here. The iBox springs, they are good, but feel a little bouncy over bumps and not adjustable. Bouncy over bumps. That could probably just be because the spring rate and the strut is not necessarily in alignment with one another. But I would wager it's still better than and I'm talking about the stock coilovers with no EDC, just the F30s that have the same strut, because you have I think for some of the F30s you have two left end links, and that's because they use the exact same body design of the strut to save some cost there. So I think the base model F30s have the exact same strut body and exact same end links. And so that's exactly what's on my dad's car. And that thing, talk about body roll and bounce at 114,000. Yeah. But going back to what Shane is saying, I'm pretty sure his setup is still better than stock and base model stock. I just wanted to see. So what I'm actually going to do in the near future is I'm going to actually take my OEM coilovers from the 2 Series that had the EDC installed. And I know that I can't, unless I do something really crazy, which I will not do, retrofit the EDC onto the red F30. But I just wanted to see, even without having that adjustable portion, that adjustable damper installed, if the M Sport coilovers are noticeably different than the base model coilovers. So I'm going to do a little bit of research on that. Probably won't make a video directly, maybe just like a live stream Q&A like this, just to see if there's actually something worthwhile there. And like I said, this car is from my dad, so it doesn't have to be anything crazy. He doesn't really drive it all that hard. He just drives it around town, like to the grocery store and run a few errands here and there because he's retired. So, and plus he does not like my car as low as it is, and he doesn't like the ride. So keeping him as OEM is what we're probably going to lean towards. Okay. Parker the Rapper, you're back up. What would you recommend to stop the outer wear on the front tires? Outer wear. Honestly, that's going to have to just be like your alignment and camber caster adjustments. I had a lot of inner wear on mine, mostly because that was when I was letting the suspension settle in, and those tires were on their way out anyways. So I didn't necessarily want to ruin a new set of tires, but also when you run that little bit of camber in there with a wider wheel setup, it's just going to happen naturally, at least on the inner. I'm not so sure why you would have issues on the outer, though. Seems more like an alignment issue, toe issue, maybe. But yeah, just take it to an alignment shop and then see what they say. Yeah, I haven't encountered outer wear issues yet, but inner for sure. Okay. And Cregan is back up. Top tip for 2 Series suspension work. Make sure you have short spanners for the drop links. Yes. I had a right pain getting it off the other day. Just bought a shorter set in case. Yes. 100% yes. Everything that you just said. Yeah, when you're doing that suspension work on the 2 Series, just make sure you have an assortment of wrenches, sockets, everything. You're going to need short handle stuff, long handle stuff. Depending on if you're working at the end links at the top of the portion, at the bottom of the portion. we honestly have no clearance in the 2 series, and just having that full assortment of tools is going to be super helpful. If you don't have the tools, by no means, like, don't go into debt for any of this stuff. But if you can, call up a buddy who has the tools and can bring them over, maybe buy him pizza. I would work for pizza, but yeah. Just before you do any of this stuff, make sure to have the full assortment of tools. I've tried to do my best as of late to try to list out the tools that I use in the videos. That way, you guys are a little bit more prepared versus just like, oh, he used this tool, I should get this. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, like, a tool, in all honesty, it's not like I'm trying to be fake about anything like that, but sometimes it's hard for me to use smaller tools on a fastener because my hand gets in the way, and I want to show you guys like the actual unbolting or tightening of that fastener. So I'll use a longer, like, wrench or a socket, and then that way you can actually see the work being done. But sometimes that's not the actual tool that I use. I do try my best to use the right tool in the videos, but sometimes just to get my hand out of the way and let you guys see what I'm actually working on, I do use the, like, different tools. All right, we're having a really good conversation right now, guys. Okay, so Shane, he said the sway bars come with poly bushings. Do you recommend aftermarket end links as well? I think your videos recommended them. I wasn't sure if you can get by with your stock sway bars for now, just use them. If you plan to do coilovers in the future, do the coilovers first and see if your OEM end links fit. If they don't, you're going to know whether you need longer ones or shorter ones. To get them right now, especially if your OEM ones are still serviceable, is just going to be a waste of money. The Cregan. Outer wear on the front tires is camber plates. Millway will do the best for you. Yeah, so I've also heard that too. The Millway street version plates are really good for people who don't want to have a ton of adjustability. They just want something that will help dial in the fitment a little bit more, and also be comfortable and not give that clunking noise. So the Millway, for somebody who doesn't want the noise, doesn't need all the adjustability in the world, and wants the comfort, the Millway street version I've heard is the best to accomplish those things. I ended up going with the Vorschlag ones. I don't regret them, but you just do get a little bit more noise. You do have a little bit more room for adjustability. And it does sit lower than the OEM top hats. That's the only thing that I'll say to those, is that it does sit a little bit lower, and that's what could also factor into which end links that you get, because it when you push it up, it also changes the whole geometry of the end link mounting point on the strut. Parker the Rapper, thank you. I've read some posts saying that camber plates are clunky even when they are tight. Yes, that's true. Can anyone confirm? Okay, yeah, it's true. You do. You get like a thunk kind of sound in there. Yeah, it just happens. It's just like the nature of the design of it. I mean, technically, like, it's of a monoball design. So even when you do like the control arms with monoball bushings, you do get that little bit of a thunk in there. But it's, once you get used to it, you know when to expect the sound. Like, it's very predictable when it happens. So it shouldn't happen like randomly or sporadically. It should be like, if in your, where you work, in your work parking lot, or if you have a speed bump in your housing area, if you hit that speed bump, you know, at the same rate of speed, at the same angle every time, you should expect that sound. at that sound level and at that severity every single time. Like it's very predictable. And I'm not saying like it's going to be like crazy or anything. Like the sound that you're hearing right now, it sounds like it's there, but it's not over the top. That's what you can expect. Yeah, so the sound should never be like you hear the sound, it's like, oh my goodness, something's broken. It's just like, huh, I wonder what that is. That's the sound that you can expect when you do like any monoball type of bushing swap. The Cregan. They can be, okay, so thank you, Cregan, for confirming this. Depends on the coilover setup as well as far as the clunkiness with the camber plate sound. Yes. And here we go. Cregan. I currently need to replace my pillow ball bushings in the millway plates as they are chattering a bit, causing minor spring bind. That is one of the good things about I think so. In order from what I've been told, it's I forget. There's another company, but then Millway is second, and then I think Vorschlag is third as far as like interchangeable parts. Let me see if I can find it here really quick. Let me see. Ground control. So I've been told that ground control provides the most interchangeable parts. So if anything goes wrong, it's easier to change out on ground control. But of course, if you're not used to camber plates and things like that, it can be a bit overwhelming. And because there's more, let's say, moving parts or freely exchangeable parts, it can open up the door to like dirt getting in there, contamination, as well as potential fail points. So depending on what you want to do with your car, you just have to weigh out the risks versus the rewards. And I think the good thing about Millway is that because they offer different series in their lineups, you have a street version, which is like the least adjustable, but it's also like the least replaceable as far as internal parts. And they have like their race spec one, which is on the other end of the spectrum. So that's one of the good things about having camber plates of this design. And the Cregan, I appreciate you so much for sharing all of that. Oh, and you have more. Here we go. From what I've heard about ground control plates, the parts don't last as long and can be noisier, but you have better repairability. Okay, so cool. So we're on the same wavelength when it comes to that. Okay, cool. So it sounds like we're getting our information, or at least the information is consistent. So thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate you so much for sharing all of your insight here as well. And for everybody who came in, thank you so much for attending. I appreciate all of you for being here. And the next time we do this, don't be shy. Feel free to ask questions. We're all here to help each other. And whatever we can do to help each other be safe, have fun, I hope we can do that. And let me know whatever topics you guys want to do next time. But I hope that this was a good insight for the best mods that we put on the car last year and had time to review, and what some people should consider for the year going forward. And with that, we will close it out. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope everybody has a good night and is safe, and hope everybody has a good and prosperous 2023. I will see all of you next time.